Go forward here.
I do like free enterprise, and I am dubious about how the government intervenes often in nuclear energy issues, but not about government's role totally or completely. I think in the fuel cycle, the government does have an important role to play. In looking at the sustainable fuel cycle, I think that it essentially has 3 or 4 elements to it that we don't have any of right now, quite frankly. We need a geologic repository. Under any scenario that I'm aware of, you're going to end up with something that needs put in the ground. And we have a place to do that, Yucca Mountain. It's been mentioned many times in law. It's been studied, as we know, and that's an important part of it. But Yucca's not the only solution, or it's not the solution, it's part of the solution. And in order to really figure out how to get to that sustainable part of the fuel cycle, we need to do what I think is the second element of that system, which is producers of the nuclear waste need to have responsibility for managing the nuclear waste. If you look around the world, those countries that have successful nuclear waste programs, independent of whether it's a state-owned or state-dominated system or one that's more private-based, it's when the producers are in charge of waste management that you actually get a sustainable system. And we don't have that here. We have the utilities who produce the waste and the government who's in charge of managing it. And what we've seen is, the reason I don't trust government's role in this is when you look at the nuclear industry, government's had a role in that throughout history. And as the government pulls away from the nuclear industry, we see it become more and more successful in a market sense. We used to have state-owned enrichment. Government pulls away, now we have a robust enrichment capability. We keep hearing about how the DOE is going to help the industry run more efficiently and better. But it wasn't the DOE who helped industry be the most safe, the most efficient energy-producing industry in the history of mankind. That was industry folks figuring that out. And it was as government moved away, as we were told earlier, in the 1990s, people thought the industry was going to be going away. And industry figured out how a way to sustain itself. So put producers in charge of waste. And then we need accurate pricing for services rendered. This notion that there's a flat fee for some unknown service makes no sense, no economic sense. You can't build a sustainable economic system on that. What you need is a system whereby you produce the waste, you pay for the service to get rid of it. And maybe putting it in Yucca Mountains the most economically rational way. Maybe paying AREVA to do what they do is the most economically rational way. Maybe GE comes along with a new technology and says, we can give you X, Y, and Z for this price. That starts to build the competition. That allows the machinations of the marketplace to be brought to bear, out of which you will come up with the most economically rational way for a sustainable fuel cycle. Absent that, government just won't get it right because that's not what they are good at doing. It's not an indictment of government necessarily, but in the government's role. So what is the government's role? Quickly, it is to set broad regulation. I think that it should be, the broad regulation should be, if you produce nuclear waste, you should have a disposition pathway for it that is consistent with the decommissioning time frame of that reactor. So if it's 100 years, you got 100 years to do something with it, and you can't throw it in the river. So you got to do something with your waste, whatever it is that falls in the, that protects public health and safety. The NRC should sort of, should regulate that. So that's.
I think that it's very